My name is Briar Callahan, and I never thought I'd be plotting revenge against my mother-in-law. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? To new beginnings. I clinked my champagne flute against Kellen's, grinning as we stood in the empty living room of our first home. The hardwood floors gleamed, and sunlight streamed through the bay windows, painting everything in a golden glow. Kellen wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. Can you believe it, babe? We did it. I leaned into him, savoring the moment. After years of saving and dreaming, we finally had a place to call our own. No more cramped apartments or nosy neighbors. Just us, building our future together. The doorbell rang, shattering our peaceful bubble. Who could that be? I frowned. We haven't even told anyone our new address yet. Kellen shrugged. Maybe it's a welcome wagon or something? I opened the door, and my stomach dropped. There, on our brand new welcome mat, stood Marjorie, Kellen's mother, surrounded by a mountain of luggage. Surprise. She beamed, pushing past me into the house. Oh, isn't this lovely? A bit small, but we'll make do. I blinked, struggling to process what was happening. Marjorie, what are you doing here? Kellen appeared beside me, his face a mix of confusion and concern. Mom, is everything okay? Marjorie's smile faltered, and she dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Oh, my dears, I'm afraid I have some terrible news. I've lost my house.
What? Kellen exclaimed. How?
She launched into a sob story about unexpected debts and predatory lenders. I listened with growing unease, something about her tale not quite adding up. I hate to impose, Marjorie sniffled, but I have nowhere else to go. I was hoping maybe I could stay here, just until I get back on my feet. Kellen immediately moved to comfort her. Of course, Mom. We'll figure something out. I cleared my throat. Kellen, can I talk to you for a second? In private. We stepped into the kitchen, and I lowered my voice. Don't you think this is a little
convenient?
She shows up unannounced on the day we move in. He frowned. What are you implying? She's my mother, Briar. She needs our help. I know, but what? His tone sharpened. We can't just turn her away. I sighed, knowing I was fighting a losing battle. You're right.
I'm sorry.
It's just, this is supposed to be our fresh start. Kellen's expression softened. He cupped my face in his hands. It still is. We'll make it work, okay? I promise. I nodded, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. We returned to the living room, where Marjorie was already making herself at home, rearranging our carefully chosen throw pillows. So, she chirped, which room is mine? Kellen and I exchanged glances. We haven't really set up the guest room yet, I said. But we can get an air mattress for now. Marjorie's lips pursed. An air mattress? At my age? Really, Briar, I expected better from you. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was temporary, just until she got back on her feet. How long could that possibly take? As it turned out, longer than I ever could have imagined. What started as a few days turned into weeks, then months. Marjorie's presence seeped into every corner of our lives, her criticisms and manipulations a constant undercurrent. I tried to be patient, to be understanding. But with each passing day, I felt the dream of our perfect life slipping further away. And as I watched Marjorie work her magic on Kellen, twisting him around her little finger, I knew something had to give. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a war I never asked for, but one I was determined to win. I woke to the sound of Marjorie's shrill voice echoing through our once peaceful home. Kellen, darling, have you seen my reading glasses? I swear I left them right here on the coffee table. Groaning, I buried my face in the pillow. It had been 3 weeks since Marjorie's unexpected arrival, and each day felt like an eternity. I glanced at the clock, 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday. I'll help you look, Mom. Kellen's muffled voice came from the hallway. I dragged myself out of bed, knowing any chance of sleeping in was gone. In the kitchen, I found Marjorie rifling through drawers while Kellen searched behind couch cushions. Good morning, I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. Oh, Briar. I didn't realize you were up. I hope we didn't wake you with all the commotion. It's fine, I lied, forcing a smile. How about some breakfast? Actually, Marjorie sniffed. I was thinking we could go out for brunch. There's this lovely little place downtown I've been dying to try. I hesitated. We were planning to repaint the guest room today, remember? Oh, that old thing? Marjorie waved dismissively. It can wait. Family time is more important, isn't it, Kellen?
Kellen looked torn.
Well, we did promise to get it done this weekend. But your mother wants to spend time with us, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Surely that takes precedence. Marjorie's lips curled into a triumphant smile.
See?
Briar understands. Now let me just freshen up and we'll be on our way. As soon as she left the room, I turned to Kellen.
We can't keep doing this.
She's taking over our lives. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know it's been an adjustment, but she's family. We have to support her. And what about supporting each other? I countered. When was the last time we had a moment alone? Before Kellen could respond, Marjorie reappeared, her face plastered with a saccharine smile. Ready to go, dears? At the restaurant, Marjorie dominated the conversation, peppering Kellen with questions about his work and childhood memories. I picked at my food, feeling increasingly invisible. You know, Marjorie said, patting Kellen's hand, you remind me so much of your father. He was always such a hard worker, right up until the end. I perked up, sensing an opportunity. I'd love to hear more about Kellen's father. You don't talk about him much. Marjorie's smile faltered for a split second. Oh, it's all ancient history now. No use dwelling on the past. But surely you have some happy memories to share? I pressed. Briar, Kellen warned, shooting me a look. Marjorie's eyes hardened. I think that's quite enough trip down memory lane for one day. Kellen, be a dear and ask for the check. As we drove home, tension hung thick in the air. Marjorie broke the silence, her voice dripping with false concern. Briar, I couldn't help but notice you seem a bit stressed lately. Is everything all right at work? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Actually, I've been looking for a new job. The market's tough right now. Oh, that's right. Marjorie clucked sympathetically. You lost your position, didn't you?
Such a shame.
Have you considered something a little less demanding? Maybe part-time work would be better suited to your skills. I bit my tongue, knowing any response would only make things worse. Kellen remained silent, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. That night, as we got ready for bed, I couldn't hold back anymore. Kellen, we need to talk about your mother. He sighed heavily. Can we not do this now? I'm exhausted. When then? I demanded. Because every day she's here, I feel like I'm losing a piece of myself and you. Kellen's expression softened. He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment I allowed myself to hope. It'll get better, he murmured. We just need to give it time. But as I lay awake that night, listening to Marjorie's snores from the guest room, I knew something had to change. And if Kellen wouldn't see it, I'd have to make him see before it was too late. I stared at my computer screen, my heart sinking as I read the rejection email. Another job opportunity slipped through my fingers. That made 5 in the past 2 weeks, all positions I was more than qualified for. Something wasn't adding up. Any luck, dear? Marjorie's saccharine voice drifted from the doorway. I quickly closed my laptop. Not yet, I replied, forcing a smile. But I'm sure something will turn up soon. Marjorie sked sympathetically. Well, don't worry yourself too much. Kellen's doing so well at work. I'm sure he can support us all. Us all. The words grated on my nerves. I opened my mouth to retort when my phone buzzed. A text from my friend Zoe. Coffee? We need to talk. An hour later, I sat across from Zoe in our favorite cafe, clutching a latte like a lifeline. Briar, I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, Zoe began, her expression grave. But I overheard Marjorie on the phone yesterday. She was talking to someone about your job applications. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Zoe leaned in, lowering her voice. She was bragging about how she'd been calling your potential employers, posing as a reference. Saying awful things about you, Briar. Sabotaging your chances. The world tilted on its axis. Suddenly, everything made sense. The string of rejections, Marjorie's false sympathy, her comments about Kellen supporting us all. I'm going to kill her, I growled, my hands shaking with rage. Zoe grabbed my arm.
Whoa, slow down.
You need to talk to Kellen first. Make him see what's really going on. I nodded, my mind racing. You're right. This ends now. Back at home, I found Kellen in the kitchen, Marjorie hovering nearby as always. We need to talk, I said, my voice steely. Alone. Marjorie's eyes narrowed, but Kellen nodded, following me to our bedroom. I closed the door and took a deep breath. Your mother has been sabotaging my job search, I said, the words tumbling out. She's been calling potential employers, lying about me, making sure I don't get hired. Kellen's face clouded with disbelief. Briar, that's a serious accusation. Are you sure? Zoe overheard her bragging about it on the phone. I insisted. Think about it, Kellen. How else do you explain all these rejections? He ran a hand through his hair, conflicted. But why would she do that? To keep me dependent, to drive a wedge between us, I said, my voice breaking. Kellen, I can't do this anymore. Something has to change. His expression hardened. What are you saying? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm saying it's time for Marjorie to leave. If she doesn't go, I will. Kellen's eyes widened in shock. You can't be serious. She's my mother, Briar. We can't just throw her out on the street. And I'm your wife. I shot back. Don't I matter? Don't we matter? Before Kellen could respond, the door burst open. Marjorie stood there, her face a mask of hurt and indignation. I heard everything, she said, her voice trembling. How could you, Briar? After all I've done for this family? Kellen turned to his mother, his expression torn. Mom, is it true? Have you been interfering with Briar's job search? Marjorie's eyes welled with tears. Of course not. How could you even think such a thing? I've only ever wanted what's best for both of you. She's lying, I hissed, but Marjorie was on a roll. I've tried so hard to fit in, to be helpful, she wailed. And this is how you repay me? By trying to turn my own son against me. Kellen looked between us, clearly overwhelmed. I think we all need to calm down, and… No, I interrupted, my patience finally snapping. I'm done calming down. I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. Kellen, you need to choose.
Right now.
It's her or me. The silence that followed was deafening. Marjorie's sobs filled the air as Kellen stood frozen, caught between the two women in his life. In that moment, I realized I might have just made the biggest mistake of my life. But as I looked at Marjorie's triumphant smirk hidden behind her handkerchief, I knew I couldn't back down now. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. The tension in our house was unbearable. Kellen had retreated into himself, spending long hours at work and barely speaking when he was home. Marjorie, on the other hand, had ramped up her efforts to play the doting mother, cooking elaborate meals and fussing over Kellen's every need. I was at my wit's end, feeling like a stranger in my own home. That's when it happened. I woke to the sound of a crash and Marjorie's piercing scream. Heart pounding, I rushed downstairs to find her crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, Kellen kneeling beside her.
Mom.
Are you okay? Kellen's voice was frantic. Marjorie moaned dramatically. Oh, my heart. I need to go to the hospital. I stood frozen, a nagging suspicion growing in the pit of my stomach. Something about this scene felt off, too perfectly timed. At the hospital, we waited anxiously as doctors ran tests. Kellen paced the waiting room, his face etched with worry. I tried to comfort him, but he shrugged off my touch. Finally, a doctor approached us. Mrs. Callahan is stable, he said. But she's had a mild heart attack. She'll need to stay for observation and follow up with a cardiologist. Kellen's shoulders sagged with relief. Can we see her? We entered Marjorie's room to find her looking pale but alert. Her eyes locked onto Kellen. "Oh, my darling boy," she whimpered. I was so frightened. As Kellen rushed to her bedside, I hung back, observing. Marjorie's performance was flawless, the trembling hands, the weak voice. But something in her eyes, a glimmer of satisfaction, made my skin crawl. "The doctor says you need to take it easy for a while," Kellen said, holding her hand. "Don't worry, we'll take care of everything." Marjorie's gaze flicked to me, a hint of triumph in her smile. "You're both so good to me. I don't know what I'd do without you." That night, as Kellen slept fitfully beside me, I made a decision. If no one else was going to uncover the truth about Marjorie, I would do it myself. The next day, while Kellen was at the hospital, I began my investigation. I started with a simple Google search of Marjorie's name, which led me down a rabbit hole of old newspaper articles and public records. What I found made my blood run cold. Marjorie had a history of financial troubles, but they weren't the result of bad luck or predatory lenders. She had been sued multiple times for fraud and embezzlement. And her late husband, Kellen's father, had died under mysterious circumstances, right after changing his life insurance policy to name Marjorie as the sole beneficiary. I was so engrossed in my research that I didn't hear Kellen come home. He found me surrounded by printouts and scribbled notes. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice tight. I took a deep breath. "Kellen, there's something you need to see." As I laid out the evidence of Marjorie's past misdeeds, Kellen's face went through a range of emotions: disbelief, anger, and finally, a deep, crushing sadness. "This can't be true," he whispered. "She's my mother." "I know it's hard to accept," I said gently, "but we can't ignore the facts." Kellen stood abruptly. "I need some air." As the front door slammed behind him, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Back off, or things will get much worse. For everyone." A chill ran down my spine. Marjorie knew I was onto her, and she wasn't going to go down without a fight. That night, as I lay awake listening to Kellen's restless tossing and turning, I realized we had reached a point of no return. The truth about Marjorie was out there, waiting to be fully uncovered. But at what cost to my marriage, to the life Kellen and I had built together? I closed my eyes, steeling myself for the battle ahead. Whatever Marjorie had planned, I would be ready. The stakes were too high to back down now. The morning after my late-night discovery, I woke to an empty bed. Kellen had left early for work, avoiding another confrontation. I couldn't blame him. The truth about his mother was a bitter pill to swallow. I spent the day digging deeper into Marjorie's past, following every lead I could find. By afternoon, I had uncovered a trail of financial irregularities that made my head spin. But the real bombshell came when I stumbled upon records of multiple bank accounts in Marjorie's name, all opened within weeks of her husband's death. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transaction history. Deposits totaling over $1 million, far more than Marjorie had ever claimed to have. And the source? Life insurance payouts. "Oh my God," I whispered, the pieces finally falling into place. Marjorie wasn't destitute. She was sitting on a fortune while playing the penniless widow. I was so engrossed in my findings that I didn't hear the front door open. Marjorie's voice made me jump. "What are you up to, dear?" she asked, her tones sickly sweet. I slammed my laptop shut. "Just job hunting," I lied, my heart racing. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "Still no luck?"
Such a shame.
I was thinking, perhaps it's time you considered a different path. Kellen makes more than enough to support us both." The implication in her words was clear. She wanted me out of the picture, financially dependent and powerless. I forced a smile. "I appreciate your concern, Marjorie, but I'm not giving up just yet." She patted my hand, her grip just a little too tight. "Of course, dear. Just remember, family comes first." As she left the room, I let out a shaky breath. The threat in her words was unmistakable. I had to act fast. That evening, I cornered Kellen in our bedroom. "We need to talk about your mother," I said, my voice firm. He sighed, shoulders slumping. "Briar, please. Not this again." "Just hear me out," I pleaded. I laid out everything I'd found: the hidden bank accounts, the life insurance money, the pattern of deceit stretching back years. Kellen listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, he sat heavily on the bed, head in his hands. "I can't believe this," he murmured. "All these years. She lied to me about everything." I sat beside him, taking his hand. "I'm so sorry, Kellen. I know how much this hurts." He looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and anger. "What do we do now?" Before I could answer, a scream echoed through the house. We rushed downstairs to find Marjorie sprawled on the kitchen floor, clutching her chest. "My heart," she gasped. "Call an ambulance." Kellen immediately reached for his phone, but I grabbed his arm. "Wait," I hissed. "Think about it. This is exactly what she did last time when she felt cornered." He hesitated, torn between concern and suspicion. Marjorie's eyes darted between us, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "Kellen," she whimpered. "Please. Your own mother." In that moment, I saw the doubt in Kellen's eyes harden into resolve. He lowered his phone. "No more games, Mom. We know everything." Marjorie's demeanor changed in an instant. She stood up, all traces of weakness gone. Her eyes blazed with a cold fury I'd never seen before. "You ungrateful children," she spat. "After everything I've done for this family?" "You mean after everything you've stolen from this family?" I shot back. Marjorie's laugh was bitter. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. If you think you can expose me, think again. I'll burn this entire family to the ground before I let that happen." As she stormed out of the kitchen, Kellen and I exchanged glances. The battle lines were drawn, and the stakes had never been higher. We had the truth on our side, but Marjorie had years of manipulation and deceit. The final confrontation was coming, and we had to be ready. The tension in our house had reached a breaking point. Marjorie, sensing her web of lies unraveling, had become increasingly erratic. Kellen, torn between his love for me and his lifelong bond with his mother, was a shell of his former self. I knew it was time for the final confrontation. "We need to end this," I told Kellen one morning. "All of us, together. No more secrets, no more lies." He nodded, his eyes hollow.
How?
"A family meeting," I said. "We lay everything out on the table." That evening, we gathered in the living room. Marjorie sat primly on the sofa, her face a mask of innocence. Kellen paced nervously, while I stood my ground, armed with a folder full of evidence. "What's this about?" Marjorie asked, her voice syrupy sweet. I took a deep breath. "It's time for the truth, Marjorie. All of it." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." I opened the folder, spreading documents across the coffee table. "Bank statements, Marjorie. Life insurance policies. Court records. They tell quite a story." Marjorie's face paled, but she quickly recovered. "Those could be anything. You're trying to turn my son against me with these fabrications." Kellen stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Are they fabrications, Mom? Because they look real to me." "Kellen, darling," Marjorie pleaded, reaching for his hand. "You can't possibly believe these lies. After everything I've sacrificed for you." I pressed on, revealing each piece of evidence. The hidden bank accounts, the suspicious circumstances surrounding her husband's death, the pattern of fraud and deceit stretching back years. With each revelation, Marjorie's denials grew more frantic. She accused me of forgery, of manipulation, of trying to steal her son away. But I could see the doubt creeping into Kellen's eyes. "Why, Mom?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do all this?" Marjorie's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful child. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? By siding with this gold digger." I felt a surge of triumph. Marjorie was losing control, showing her true colors. But I had one last card to play. "There's more," I said, pulling out my phone. "Something you can't deny." I pressed play on a video my friend Zoe had secretly recorded. Marjorie's voice filled the room, bragging to a friend about her schemes, her manipulation of Kellen. Her plans to drive me away and secure her place in our home. The color drained from Marjorie's face as she watched herself on the screen, laying bare every lie she'd told. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. Kellen stared at his mother, a mixture of horror and heartbreak etched on his face. "It's all true," he said, his voice hollow. "Everything Briar said. You've been lying to me my entire life." Marjorie's demeanor changed in an instant. Gone was the sweet, doting mother. In her place stood a woman consumed by bitterness and greed. "You think you've won?" she snarled, her eyes blazing. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. I'll destroy you both before I let you take what's mine." She lunged for the folder of evidence, but Kellen was faster. He grabbed her arm, holding her back. "It's over, Mom," he said, his voice firm. "No more lies. No more manipulation." Marjorie wrenched her arm free, her face a mask of fury. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll regret this, both of you." She stormed out of the room, leaving Kellen and me in stunned silence. As the front door slammed, I turned to Kellen, unsure of what to say. But before I could speak, he pulled me into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "For doubting you, for not seeing the truth sooner." I held him close, feeling the tension of the past months finally start to ebb away. But as we stood there, I couldn't shake the feeling that Marjorie's final threat wasn't empty. This battle was won, but the war wasn't over yet. The morning after our confrontation with Marjorie, Kellen and I woke to an eerie silence. The guest room was empty, Marjorie's belongings gone. For a moment, I dared to hope it was over. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll pay for this. Both of you." Kellen's face paled as I showed him the message. "We need to do something," he said, his voice tight with worry. "She won't stop until she's destroyed everything." I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. "It's time we took this to the authorities. We have enough evidence to press charges." As we prepared to leave for the police station, a frantic knock at the door startled us. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, looking panicked. "There's a woman outside," she gasped. "She's pouring something all over your car." We rushed outside to find Marjorie, wild-eyed and disheveled, emptying a gas can onto Kellen's car. The acrid smell of gasoline filled the air. "Mom," Kellen shouted, horrified. "What are you doing?" Marjorie whirled to face us, a manic grin on her face. "Teaching you both a lesson," she snarled, pulling out a lighter. Time seemed to slow. I saw the flame flicker to life, saw Marjorie's arm begin to move. Without thinking, I lunged forward, tackling her to the ground. The lighter flew from her hand, skittering across the pavement. Kellen was there in an instant, restraining his mother as she thrashed and screamed. "Let me go. You ungrateful brats. I'll see you both ruined." Sirens wailed in the distance, Mrs. Chin must have called the police. As officers arrived on the scene, the full weight of what had just happened hit me. Marjorie had tried to destroy our property, possibly harm us. This was no longer just about money or manipulation. This was dangerous. At the police station, Kellen and I gave our statements, presenting all the evidence we had gathered. Marjorie, for her part, had retreated into stony silence, refusing to speak without a lawyer present. As we waited for news, Kellen turned to me, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and determination. "I want to press charges," he said quietly. "For everything. The fraud, the attempted arson, all of it." I squeezed his hand, knowing how difficult this decision was for him. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "It's the only way to make sure she can't hurt anyone else. And I want to try to reclaim my father's inheritance. It was never hers to take." A detective approached us, her expression grave. "We've reviewed your evidence and statements," she said. "We're charging Marjorie Callahan with multiple counts of fraud, attempted arson, and threatening behavior. Given her actions and the risk she poses, she'll be held without bail pending trial." Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the sadness in Kellen's eyes. This was his mother, after all, no matter what she had done. As we prepared to leave, an officer escorted Marjorie past us in handcuffs. She stopped, her eyes locking onto Kellen's. How could you do this to your own mother? She hissed. After everything I've sacrificed for you? Kellen stood tall, his voice steady. You sacrificed nothing, Mom. You only took. From Dad, from me, from everyone around you. It stops now. For a moment, I saw something flicker in Marjorie's eyes, a hint of the mother Kellen must have once known. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by cold fury. This isn't over, she spat as the officer led her away. You haven't seen the last of me. As we watched her disappear down the hallway, Kellen sagged against me, the weight of everything finally hitting him. I held him close, knowing that while this chapter was closing, the road to healing would be long. Let's go home, I whispered. We have a lot to figure out. Kellen nodded, straightening up. As we walked out of the police station, hand in hand, I felt a glimmer of hope. The worst was over. Now, we could start rebuilding our lives, our relationship, and the future we had always dreamed of. 6 months after Marjorie's arrest, Kellen and I stood in the empty living room of our new home. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on the freshly painted walls. It felt like a world away from the chaos and pain we'd endured. Ready? Kellen asked, a small smile playing on his lips. I nodded, taking his hand. Ready. We walked out onto the porch, where a small group of friends and family had gathered. Zoe was there, along with Mrs. Chun and a few of our closest confidants who had supported us through the ordeal. Kellen cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. We wanted to share this moment with the people who stood by us during the darkest times. I squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. This house represents a new chapter for us, a fresh start, free from the shadows of the past. As we chatted and gave tours of the house, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us here. The legal battle with Marjorie had been grueling, but ultimately successful. Kellen had reclaimed a significant portion of his father's estate, and Marjorie was serving time for her crimes. Later that evening, as our guests departed, Kellen and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset. I got a letter from Mom today, Kellen said quietly. I tensed. What did it say? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. She's
Different.
The psychologist at the prison says she's making progress, acknowledging her actions, showing remorse. I nodded, unsure how to respond. The wounds were still fresh, the trust shattered. I'm not ready to forgive her, Kellen continued. I don't know if I ever will be, but I think I understand her a little better now. The fear, the desperation that drove her. I leaned my head on his shoulder. You have a big heart, Kellen. It's one of the things I love most about you. He kissed the top of my head. I couldn't have gotten through this without you, you know. Your strength, your determination. You saved us. We saved each other, I corrected gently. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Oh, I said, suddenly remembering. I have some news. Kellen turned to me, eyebrow raised. Good news, I hope? I took a deep breath, a smile spreading across my face. Remember that job interview I had last week? The one at the nonprofit. He nodded eagerly. I got it. I beamed. I start next month. Kellen hooped, pulling me into a tight embrace. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you, Briar. As we celebrated, I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lift from my shoulders. After months of uncertainty and struggle, things were finally falling into place. Actually, I said, my heart racing with excitement and nerves, I have one more piece of news. Kellen looked at me curiously. I took his hand, placing it gently on my stomach. We're going to have a baby. His eyes widened, a mix of shock and joy crossing his face. Are you serious? We're going to be parents. I nodded, happy tears welling in my eyes. Kellen pulled me close, laughing and crying at the same time. As we held each other, I thought about the journey ahead. There would be challenges, of course. The scars from Marjorie's betrayal wouldn't fade overnight. But we had weathered the storm together, emerging stronger and more united than ever. Looking out at our new neighborhood, With Kellen's arms around me and the promise of new life growing inside me, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had faced the darkness and come out the other side. Whatever the future held, we would face it together. To new beginnings, Kellen whispered, echoing the words we'd spoken so long ago on that first night in our old house. I smiled, kissing him softly. To new beginnings and to the family we're building the right way. As night fell, we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, looking forward to the bright future ahead. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was ours to shape. And with love, trust, and determination, I knew we could overcome anything life threw our way.
I should have known something was wrong when my mother didn't even look at me during my graduation ceremony. She was too busy fussing over my half-sister Sadie's hair, making sure every strand was perfect for the photos she wasn't even supposed to be in. This was my day, at least it was supposed to be. My name is Tessa and I graduated high school yesterday. Today I'm sitting in the campus library, staring at an email that's making my blood run cold. Dear Miss Whitmore, we confirm receipt of your withdrawal from fall admission. I read the words again and again, my hands shaking. I never sent a withdrawal letter to Stanford. This was my dream, the escape plan I'd been working toward for the past 4 years. Something wasn't adding up. There you are. Sadie's voice cut through my thoughts. She was leaning against the doorframe, twirling her perfectly styled hair. Mom's looking everywhere for you. We're about to head to Rosetta's for my early graduation celebration lunch. My graduation was yesterday, I said, my voice flat. Yours isn't for another year. Sadie shrugged, examining her manicured nails. Dad says it's never too early to celebrate success. Besides, I already got accepted to Yale. Early admission. She paused, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh wait, weren't you supposed to hear back from Stanford by now? The way she said it, something in her tone made my stomach drop. I glanced back at the email, then at her phone clutched in her hand. Suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. You did this, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. You hacked my email and withdrew my application. Sadie's expression didn't change, but her eyes glittered. Prove it. Before I could respond, my mother's voice echoed through the library. Girls, what's taking so long? Grant's waiting in the car. I watched as Sadie transformed, her face softening into the perfect daughter mask she wore so well. Coming, Mom. I found her. My mother appeared behind Sadie, looking immaculate as always in her designer dress. Tessa, why are you still in here? Everyone's waiting. And please tell me you're not wearing those ratty jeans to lunch. I looked down at my favorite pair of worn jeans, suddenly feeling shabby and small. I'm not feeling well, I lied. I think I'll skip lunch. Don't be ridiculous, my mother said, but her attention was already back on Sadie, adjusting her daughter's collar. This is a family celebration. For what? The words burst out before I could stop them. My graduation was yesterday, and none of you even stayed for the whole ceremony. Oh, honey, my mother sighed, that familiar look of disappointment crossing her face. We had to leave early for Sadie's Yale interview prep. You know how important that was. Besides, you're just going to beauty school now, right? I froze. I hadn't told anyone about applying to beauty school. It was my backup plan, something I'd only researched in secret. Sadie's smirk told me everything I needed to know. She'd been monitoring my emails for longer than I'd realized. Actually, I said, standing up and gathering my things, I'm not feeling well at all. I think I need to go lie down. Suit yourself, my mother said, already turning away. Come on, Sadie, darling. We don't want to keep your father waiting. I watched them leave, Sadie throwing one last triumphant glance over her shoulder. As their footsteps faded, I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person who had always been in my corner. Grandma Ruth? It's Tessa. I need your help. My voice cracked slightly. Something's happened and I don't know what to do. Come over, sweetheart, my grandmother's warm voice replied. And bring those college emails with you. We'll figure this out together. As I gathered my things to leave, I caught sight of my reflection in the library window. For the first time in years, I didn't see the shadow of my perfect half-sister or my mother's disappointment. I saw someone who was done being pushed around. Sadie might think she'd won, but she had no idea what she'd just started. Grandma Ruth's kitchen always smelled like vanilla and hope. As I sat at her worn oak table, clutching a mug of tea, I could almost pretend everything was normal. But the Stanford withdrawal email glaring from my phone screen said otherwise. That girl has gone too far this time, Ruth said, her usually gentle voice sharp with anger. She was already dialing her phone. I'm calling Marla. Your aunt needs to know about this. I reached across the table and caught her wrist. Please don't. Not yet. The last thing I needed was another family drama. I need to handle this myself. Ruth set the phone down but fixed me with that knowing look she'd perfected over 70 years. And how exactly do you plan to do that, sweetheart? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed across the screen, followed by a string of messages. Where are you? Grant is furious you missed lunch. Come home now. I switched the phone off and pushed it away. I can't go back there tonight. Of course you can't, Ruth said, already heading to the spare bedroom. You'll stay here. But tomorrow you need a plan. She was right. I needed more than just a plan. I needed leverage. Sadie had been playing this game longer than me, and she'd gotten sloppy. There had to be evidence of what she'd done. The next morning, I walked into our kitchen to find Grant and Mom having one of their quiet conversations that always seemed to be about me. They fell silent when I entered. Nice of you to finally join us, Grant said, not looking up from his tablet. Your mother tells me you've been making some interesting career choices. I grabbed an apple from the counter, trying to keep my voice steady. I haven't made any choices yet. Beauty school, he scoffed. That's hardly a career. Besides, we've already discussed your role in the family business. No, they'd discussed it. I'd just been told. Actually, I said, I wanted to talk about my Stanford application. The kitchen went quiet. Too quiet. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Oh, that reminds me. Sadie breezed in, perfectly timed as always. Dad, remember that investment opportunity one told you about? The one through Chad's father's firm? Grant's face lit up, the way it never did for me. The tech startup? Have they opened up spots for early investors? They have, Sadie smiled, shooting me a quick glance. But we should discuss it privately. You know how these things are. I watched as she led Grant away, effectively shutting down any conversation about Stanford. But not before I caught a glimpse of something on her phone screen. An email draft with a familiar header. Tessa, Mom said, finally acknowledging me. About yesterday. Save it, I cut her off. I need to get ready for work. Work, she blinked. What work? My shift at Mel's Diner starts in an hour. I hadn't planned to tell her, but suddenly I wanted her to know. I've been working there for 3 weeks. Her face crumpled into that familiar look of disappointment. A diner? What will people think? They might think I'm responsible. Independent. I met her eyes. Like Sadie. Mom's expression hardened. Don't start with that jealousy again. Your sister, half-sister, works hard for everything she gets. Maybe if you showed half her initiative. I laughed, and the sound surprised us both. You have no idea what Sadie's capable of, do you? What's that supposed to mean? But I was already heading upstairs. I had a shift to get to, and more importantly, I had a plan forming. Sadie wasn't the only one who could access emails. And I had a feeling that draft I'd glimpsed on her phone would be very interesting to Grant if he knew what his perfect daughter was really planning with Chad's father's firm. As I changed into my diner uniform, I heard Sadie's laughter floating up from Grant's study. She thought she had everyone fooled. But she'd forgotten one thing. I'd been watching her tricks for years. And now it was my turn to play. The thing about working at a diner is you hear everything. People forget you're there, like you're just part of the furniture. That's how I overheard Chad Miller bragging to his friends about the foolproof investment scheme he and Sadie were planning. I was wiping down their table when Chad's words made me freeze. Grant Alden won't know what hit him, Chad laughed, not noticing me. Sadie's got him wrapped around her finger. One signature from Daddy Dearest, and we're set. My hand tightened around the rag. Before I could hear more, Mel called me from the kitchen. Tessa, your grandmother's on the phone. Says it's urgent. Ruth never called me at work. Something was wrong. Sweetheart, her voice was tight with worry. Sadie's here. She's telling your mother some pretty serious stories about you. My stomach dropped. What kind of stories? She's saying you've been stealing from Grant's office. That you're trying to sabotage her Yale acceptance. Tessa, she has screenshots. Of course she did. Sadie never made a move without backup. I'll be right there, I said, already untying my apron. When I pulled up to our house, Aunt Marla's car was in the driveway. Great. Sadie had called in the whole cavalry. Inside, they were waiting in the living room like some kind of intervention. Mom was crying, actually crying, while Sadie sat beside her, the perfect picture of concern. Grant stood by the fireplace, his face stormy. Aunt Marla looked uncertain, glancing between everyone. Show her, Sadie said softly, handing her phone to Grant. He thrust it at me. On the screen was an email draft, one I'd supposedly written, detailing plans to hack into his company's accounts. It was dated the same day as my Stanford withdrawal. I didn't write that, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. It's from your email account, Grant said. Just like the Stanford withdrawal, which I also didn't write. I looked at Mom, pleading. You have to believe me. Sadie's setting me up. Oh, here we go again, Sadie sighed. Always blaming me for your mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar. Like how you and Chad are planning to scam Grant out of his investment money? The room went silent. Sadie's face flickered for just a moment before she recovered. What is she talking about? Grant demanded. She's lying, Sadie said quickly. She's just jealous because Chad asked me to prom instead of her. I heard him at the diner, I pressed on. Ask him about the foolproof investment scheme you two cooked up. Enough. Mom stood up, mascara streaking her cheeks. Tessa, how dare you make up such horrible lies about your sister? Half-sister, I corrected automatically. See. Sadie's eyes welled with perfect tears. She's always trying to divide our family. First the stealing, now these accusations. Aunt Marla finally spoke up. Maybe we should all take a breath. No, Grant cut her off. I want to know what's really going on. Tessa, if you can't prove these accusations, check his investment portfolio, I said. Look for any new tech startups linked to Richard Miller's firm. Grant's face changed. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly. Sadie stood up suddenly. Daddy, you don't have to. Sit down, he snapped, and for the first time, I saw real fear in Sadie's eyes. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. I looked up to find Sadie staring at me, her mask finally cracking. Behind the perfect makeup and practiced tears, I saw something ugly and desperate. I have to go, I said, backing toward the door. My shift isn't over. Tessa, wait. Aunt Marla called, but I was already gone. In my car, my hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. I'd finally pushed back, but this wasn't over. Sadie wouldn't let it be. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ruth. Come stay with me tonight. We need to talk about your beauty school application. I think I can help. I started the car, watching Sadie's silhouette in the living room window. She might have the family fooled, but she'd forgotten something important about me. I had nothing left to lose. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I found myself standing in Ruth's bathroom, surrounded by mannequin heads with half-finished hairstyles. My hands were cramping from hours of practice, but I couldn't stop. Not when I was finally getting somewhere. You're getting better, Ruth said from the doorway, watching me work. That French braid actually looks French this time. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with Grant's name. I'd been dodging his calls since the investment scheme revelation, but this time something made me answer. Where are the files? His voice was ice cold. What files? Don't play dumb, Tessa. The backup drives from my home office are missing. Sadie says she saw you in there last night. I gripped the edge of the sink. I haven't been home in 3 weeks. You know that. Then explain why your fingerprints are all over my desk. My old house key. The one I'd forgotten to return. Sadie must have. Check your security cameras, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Conveniently disabled last night. Along with Sadie's phone tracking app. Of course they were. I could almost admire how thorough she was being. Grant, think about it. Why would I? Because you're desperate, he cut in. Working at that diner, living with your grandmother. You're not exactly making good life choices. The mannequin head toppled as I spun around, nearly knocking over my carefully organized styling tools. At least I'm not the one being scammed by my own daughter. We've investigated Chad's investment proposal. Everything checks out. You're just trying to cause trouble, like always. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Have you actually met Richard Miller? Chad's father? Or just seen the paperwork Sadie showed you? The silence on the other end told me everything. You have until tomorrow to return the files, he said finally. Or I'm calling the police. The line went dead. I looked up to find Ruth watching me, her face tight with worry. I heard, she said quietly. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Sadie. Meet me at Riverside Park. 1 hour. Come alone or the drives go public. I have to go, I said, already grabbing my jacket. Ruth caught my arm. Tessa, wait. There's something you should know about the trust fund your father left you. What trust fund? The one Lila's been managing since he died. You're supposed to get access when you turn 21. The world tilted sideways. Mom told me there wasn't any money left. Ruth's expression hardened. There's plenty left. Nearly $500,000. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you. My phone buzzed again. Sadie, tick-tock. I have to deal with this first, I said, heading for the door. But we're not done talking about the trust fund. Be careful, Ruth called after me. That girl fights dirty. She had no idea. At the park, Sadie was waiting by the river, looking perfectly put together as always. The missing drives sat on the bench beside her. You know, she said conversationally, I almost admire how hard you're trying. Beauty school, the diner job. It's pathetically ambitious. Where are the real drives, Sadie? She smiled. These are the real drives. But the files? Those were uploaded days ago. Insurance, you know? Against what? Against you ruining everything. Her smile vanished. Did you really think you could turn Dad against me? I'm his real daughter. You're stealing from him. I'm securing my future. Unlike you, I have plans bigger than cutting hair in some strip mall. Using Chad's fake investment scheme? Sadie's laugh was sharp. Chad, please. He's just the face of the operation. This was my idea. All of it. Including your Stanford rejection. I stepped closer. Why? What did I ever do to you? You existed, she said simply. Always there, with your sad eyes and your dead dad's trust fund. Making Mom feel guilty. Making everything complicated. The truth hit me like a physical blow. You know about the trust fund? Of course I do. Mom's been investing it in Dad's company for years. My company soon. She stood, brushing off her designer jeans. So here's the deal, walk away. From the house, the family, all of it. Or these files show everyone exactly what kind of person you really are. I stared at my half-sister, finally seeing her clearly. You really think you've won, don't you? Her smile was almost pitying. Haven't I? But as I watched her walk away, I thought about Ruth's revelation about the trust fund, about everything I'd learned working at the diner. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning. It's about surviving long enough to tell the truth. The box arrived on Ruth's doorstep the morning after my confrontation with Sadie. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a complete professional hairstyling kit. Scissors that caught the light like diamonds. Brushes with perfect bristles. Everything I'd been saving for but couldn't yet afford. Open it, Ruth urged, holding out an envelope. Read the note first. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. For when you're ready to build your own future. Love, Aunt Marla. Before I could process this, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We need to talk about the trust fund. Come home. Now. Ruth touched my shoulder. You don't have to go. But I did. Because for once, I had leverage. The house looked different somehow, smaller maybe. Mom was waiting in the kitchen. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes. Grant sat beside her, his laptop open to what looked like banking records. Where's Sadie? I asked. At Yale, Mom said quickly. Touring the campus. Really? Because I just saw her car at Chad Miller's house. Grant's head snapped up. What? Never mind that. Mom cut in. We need to discuss your father's trust fund. You mean the one you've been funneling into Grant's company? The words came out sharp, precise. The one you told me didn't exist? Mom's face went white. Who told you? Does it matter? I pulled out my phone, showing them the banking records Ruth had helped me find. What matters is it's illegal. And I have proof. Grant stood up so fast his chair toppled. Are these the files you stole? I didn't steal anything. But Sadie did. I met his eyes. Check your security footage again. The real footage, not whatever she showed you. Check the timestamps. This is ridiculous, Mom said, but her voice wavered. Sadie would never. Like she'd never hack my Stanford application? Or set up a fake investment scheme with Chad. Grant's face darkened. What investment scheme? Before I could answer, the front door slammed. Sadie stormed in, her Yale sweater wrinkled, mascara smeared. What did you do? She demanded, waving her phone. Chad just called. His father's backing out of the deal. The room went silent. Grant turned to her slowly. What deal, Sadie? She froze, realizing her mistake. For a moment, I saw panic flash across her face. Then her mask slipped back into place. Tessa's lying, she said smoothly. She's just jealous because... Stop. Grant's voice was quiet, dangerous. Show me your phone. Daddy. Now. As Sadie handed over her phone, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear in her eyes. I should go, I said, picking up my bag. But first, I turned to Mom. I want my trust fund transferred to my name. All of it. Or I go to the police with proof of embezzlement. You wouldn't, Mom whispered. Try me. I walked out, leaving chaos behind me. Through the window, I could hear Grant's voice rising, Sadie's protests, Mom's sobs. Back at Ruth's, I found her in the garden, tending her roses. She looked up as I approached. How did it go? I sat beside her, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. I think I just burned every bridge I had left. Sometimes, Ruth said, pruning a dead branch, bridges need to burn so you can build better ones. My phone buzzed again. A series of texts from Sadie. You're dead to this family. Hope you're happy now. You have no idea what you've started. I switched off my phone and picked up the hairstyling kit Aunt Marla had sent. The scissors felt right in my hand, like they'd been waiting for me. Want to be my first official client? I asked Ruth. She smiled, touching her silver hair. I thought you'd never ask. As I began setting up my supplies, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different, stronger maybe, or just more certain. Sadie was right about one thing. She had no idea what she'd started. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's future. It's about finally building your own. The first rock crashed through Ruth's front window at midnight. The second one had a note attached. Leave town or worse. I knew who sent them without reading the signature. Ruth insisted on calling the police, but they just took notes and left, saying there wasn't enough evidence. Of course there wasn't. Sadie never left evidence. The next morning, I found Grant's prized Aston Martin parked in Ruth's driveway, its pristine silver paint now decorated with long, deliberate scratches. My house key was stuck in the driver's door. I didn't do this. I told the officers who showed up 20 minutes later. But Grant and Mom were already there, Sadie crying perfectly timed tears beside them. Security footage shows someone with your build, Grant said, his voice cold. Using your key. That's impossible. I was inside all night with. With me, Ruth interrupted, stepping forward. Tessa never left the house. The cameras don't lie, Sadie sniffled. Just like she didn't lie about destroying my Yale acceptance. I spun toward her. What? The admission office called this morning, Mom said, not meeting my eyes. Someone sent them evidence that Sadie cheated on her SATs. They've rescinded her acceptance. The pieces clicked together too late. I should have known Sadie wouldn't go down without taking everyone with her. Press charges, Sadie urged Grant, wiping away tears that looked almost real. She's obviously unstable. Grant pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer. Wait, Ruth said. If you press charges, I'll have to tell them about the trust fund. About where that money really went. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Fine, Grant finally said. But I want her gone. Today. If I see her near our house or my car again, I'm calling the police. Our house. I laughed, the sound brittle. I grew up there. That was my father's. Your father is dead, Mom cut in. And you're no longer welcome in our home. The words hit harder than any rock through a window. Lila, Ruth gasped, but Mom was already turning away, leading Sadie to their car. Grant stayed behind. One more thing, he said, handing me an envelope. Cease and desist letter from my lawyers. Stay away from my family, my business, and especially my daughter. She's not your daughter, I shot back. She's a con artist who's bleeding you dry. The only person causing problems here is you. He glanced at Ruth's broken window. Clean up your act, Tessa. Before someone gets hurt. After they left, Ruth found me in the garden, staring at nothing. We'll fight this, she said. I have savings. We can get a lawyer. Don't. My voice sounded strange, distant. Sadie won't stop until she's destroyed everything. Then we'll start over. Together. But even as she said it, I saw Ruth press a hand to her chest, her breathing labored. The stress was getting to her. Her heart couldn't take much more. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Karma's a bitch. So am I. S. Below it was a link to a social media post going viral in our community. Pictures of Grant's car, security footage stills of someone who looked just like me, and a story about the unstable daughter who couldn't handle her sister's success. The comments were already rolling in. Always knew there was something off about her. Poor Sadie, having to deal with such a toxic sister. Lock her up before she really hurt someone. I deleted the app, but the damage was done. My reputation, my future, my family, Sadie had taken everything. I have to leave, I said quietly. Tessa, no. Look at your window, Ruth. Look at what she did to Grant's car. Next time it could be worse. It could be you. I'm not afraid of her. But I am. The admission hurt more than Mom's rejection. I'm afraid of what she'll do next. Of what I might do to stop her. Ruth took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Then we'll leave together. Start fresh somewhere else. I looked at my grandmother, my last real family, and made the hardest decision of my life. No, I said. I have to do this alone. Because sometimes protecting the people you love means letting them go. And sometimes revenge means walking away. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I packed my bags, leaving everything I loved behind. 6 months after I left town, Aunt Marla's call brought me back. Ruth had died in her sleep, peaceful and quick, they said. I missed the funeral. Sadie's restraining order made sure of that. But today, standing in Ruth's lawyer's office, none of that mattered. She left you everything, the lawyer said, sliding the papers across his desk. The house, her savings, and this. He handed me an envelope, Ruth's familiar handwriting spelling out my name. Before I could open it, the door burst open. Sadie stormed in, followed by Mom and Grant. This is ridiculous, Sadie snapped. She's mentally unstable. There's no way Grandma Ruth meant to. She wasn't your grandmother, I said quietly, finding strength in the weight of Ruth's letter in my hands. Miss Alden, the lawyer interrupted. This meeting is private. Private? Grant stepped forward. After what she did to my car. To my company. I looked up sharply. What happened to your company? The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken accusations. Sadie's face had gone pale, her designer clothes suddenly looking cheaper, worn. The investment scheme, I realized. It wasn't just Chad's father, was it? How many fake investors did you create, Sadie? Shut up, she hissed. The SEC is investigating, Grant said, his voice hollow. We've lost everything. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. We had to sell the house. I opened Ruth's letter, needing her words more than ever. As I read, my hands began to shake. All these years, I whispered. She was gathering evidence. About the trust fund, about Sadie's schemes, everything. I looked at my half-sister. She knew what you were doing before any of us. Sadie lunged for the letter, but I was faster. You can't prove anything. Actually, the lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitmore left quite extensive documentation, including emails between Miss Alden and various fake investment accounts. You're lying, Sadie's voice cracked. Daddy, tell them. Enough. Grant's shout made us all jump. Haven't you done enough damage? Sadie's mask finally cracked. I did it for us. For our family. No, I said, standing up. You did it for yourself. Just like you sabotaged my Stanford application. Just like you framed me for vandalizing Grant's car. You have no idea what it's like, she spat. Being perfect all the time. Never making mistakes. While you got to be the tragic victim everyone felt sorry for. Sorry for? I laughed. You took everything from me. And now I have nothing. Tears streaked her makeup. So congratulations. You won. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and felt something unexpected. Pity. This wasn't about winning, I said, gathering Ruth's papers. It was about surviving you. What are you going to do? Mom asked, speaking for the first time. Press charges. I thought about Ruth, about revenge, about the cost of hatred. No, I said finally. I'm going to open a salon. In Ruth's house. I turned to Sadie. And you're going to stay away from me, or these documents go to the SEC. You can't. I can. And I will. I headed for the door, then paused. You know what the difference is between us, Sadie? I never needed to destroy you to prove my worth. Outside, the spring air felt clean new. Ruth's letter was warm in my pocket, filled with love and one final gift. The truth that would keep Sadie out of my life forever. My phone buzzed, a text from the beauty school I'd applied to. Application accepted. I smiled, thinking of Ruth's styling tools waiting at home. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's world. It's about building your own, stronger than before. Behind me, I could hear Sadie's sobs, Mom's attempts at comfort, Grant's heavy silence. But for the first time, their drama felt distant, unimportant. I had a salon to open, a life to build, and finally, the power to make it happen on my own terms. 1 year after Ruth's death, I stood in front of my salon mirror, watching the morning light stream through newly installed windows. The sign outside read Ruth's Grace, a tribute to the woman who made it all possible. The bell chimed. Through the reflection, I saw Mom standing in the doorway, looking smaller, somehow less certain. We're not open yet, I said, continuing to arrange my styling tools. I know. She clutched her purse like a shield. I saw the article about you in the local paper. Young entrepreneur transforms historic home into thriving business. I turned, really looking at her for the first time in months. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by department store basics. Sadie's downfall had affected them all. What do you want, Mom? Sadie's in therapy, she said abruptly. Grant's filed for divorce. Everything's. She trailed off. Falling apart? She nodded, tears threatening. I found this in our old house, while we were moving out. She held out a worn envelope. It's from your father. My hands shook as I took it. Inside was a faded photograph, me at 5, sitting in his salon chair, playing with his styling tools. On the back, he'd written, "My little artist following in my footsteps." I never told you, Mom said softly. But the salon was his dream too. Before the cancer. She stopped, composing herself. I was wrong, Tessa. About everything. The bell chimed again. Aunt Marla walked in, carrying a box of old styling magazines. She froze when she saw Mom. I should go, Mom said quickly. Stay. The word surprised us both. I could use help organizing the magazine collection. If you want. As they sorted through the boxes, I opened the final letter from Ruth, the one I'd found hidden in her styling kit. Dearest Tessa, by now you've probably figured out why I kept such detailed records of Sadie's schemes. But that wasn't my real gift to you. Your father left you more than just a trust fund. He left you his talent, his dream. I saw it every time you picked up those scissors. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting free. A text lit up my phone. Sadie, for the first time since the lawyer's office. I'm sorry, it read. Nothing more. I deleted it without responding. Some bridges stay burned. The morning sun caught the salon's new sign, casting warm shadows across the floor. Mom and Marla's quiet conversation mixed with the rustle of magazines, the gentle hum of hair dryers warming up. First clients in 15 minutes, I announced, straightening my work apron. Either help set up or head out. Mom stood uncertainly, then reached for a broom. Marla smiled, continuing to organize magazines. I looked at my reflection one last time. Not a victim, not a revenge seeker, just a woman building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Ruth was right. The best revenge wasn't exposing Sadie's schemes or watching my family's perfect facade crumble. It wasn't even succeeding despite their doubts. The best revenge was discovering I never needed revenge at all. I just needed to find my own path. The bell chimed again, my first client of the day. I picked up my scissors, feeling their familiar weight. In the mirror, I caught a glimpse of something in Mom's expression, pride maybe or regret. Perhaps both. But I wasn't doing this for her, or for Sadie, or even for Ruth anymore. I was doing it for that little girl in the photograph, playing with her father's styling tools, dreaming of creating something beautiful. Welcome to Ruth's Grace, I said to my client, my voice strong and sure. What are we creating today? Behind me, the past lingered in shadows, Sadie's schemes, Mom's neglect, all the pain and betrayal. But ahead lay something brighter. A future built not on revenge or resentment, but on the simple joy of following my own dreams. Sometimes that's the greatest victory of all.
Oh, you are back. Have you found out the baby's gender yet? Surely, it's a boy, right? No. According to the doctor, it's a girl. What? At that moment, my mother-in-law grabbed a box cutter from the table and pointed it at me. Say it again. It's a boy, right? No. It's a girl. What's so cute about a girl? Girls can't be heirs, and we don't need one. Not having a boy to continue the family line, you really are useless. I was hoping for a boy too. After spending so much on fertility treatments, a girl is unacceptable. The moment it was revealed that the child I was carrying was a girl, my mother-in-law's face turned flushed, and she started yelling at me with the box cutter in hand. I was shocked and fell down, but at the same time, anger welled up from the depths of my heart. What does she think a child's life is? And who does she think she is? I got it, then I will leave with this child. Girls are unnecessary, right? With those words, I left the house. However, I was not going to let it end there. Later, I gave birth to a healthy child. Then, my panicked husband and mother-in-law came to visit me. The shocking truth about the child I revealed left them both astonished. It was too late for them to regret what they had done to me, and the hurtful words they had said to my unborn child. I am a housewife living in LA with my husband. I turned 30 this year, and finally managed to get pregnant with our first child. Until recently, we had been struggling with infertility. And despite trying to conceive since we got married, we had not been blessed with a child. We went through fertility treatments, and when I finally became pregnant, I was so happy I cried, but it wasn't an easy journey. My husband supported me through the fertility treatments. But my mother-in-law constantly complained. It's been 3 years since you got married, and you still haven't had a child? Well, I didn't intend to tell you this. But I seem to have a body that's hard to get pregnant. I do want a child, though. Do you mean you can't have children? Not exactly. It seems to be difficult because of my constitution. I wish you could see it in a longer perspective. Every time I visited my in-laws, my mother-in-law would bluntly ask whether we still hadn't had a child or if our marital life at night was adequate. Since I was struggling with infertility, her words deeply hurt me. And I had discussed it with my husband several times. Although he talked to his mother about it, her attitude only worsened instead of improving. Are you undergoing fertility treatment? I hear it costs a lot every month. Is that true? Yes, so I'm also working part-time to support our household. As you get older, the chances of getting pregnant decrease, and the risks increase. That's why I'm paying to increase those chances. You're causing trouble for my son with your body condition. Don't you feel sorry? Seriously, this is why. Day by day, my mother-in-law's behavior worsened, and I was honestly very stressed. Does this woman not have the ability to read people's feelings? I wish she could understand my situation a bit more and not add to my stress. However, my mother-in-law had no such kindness. Besides, pregnancy was a matter between my husband and me. And I wanted her to leave it alone. Her meddling was stressful. And that stress contributed to my infertility. She just wouldn't try to understand that and kept imposing her thoughts on me. I had almost given up having children, that's why, when I discovered I was pregnant, I was truly happy and cried with my husband. I quit my part-time job immediately and spent my days learning about childcare and what to take care of as a pregnant woman, growing the baby healthily inside me. However, those happy days did not last long. I'm coming in, okay? What? Please wait. Was the door unlocked? No. I had my son make a duplicate key. I wanted to be able to come and go freely to take care of you while you're pregnant. That day, I was feeling sick from morning sickness and was resting. When suddenly my mother-in-law entered through the front door, startling me. At first, I thought a burglar had entered, but it was actually my mother-in-law. Although relieved that it wasn't a stranger, I was shocked by her announcement that she had made a duplicate key. I didn't hear about this duplicate key being made. There's no need to report everything, right? I am family, after all. Isn't that natural? Family. Since you don't live in this house, a heads-up would have been nice. My words seemed to irritate her quite a bit, and she visibly soured. But why would she make a duplicate key without my permission when it's and my husband's house? My mother-in-law, and to some extent my husband, was at fault here. Although it was too late to do anything about the key now. I thought about asking for it back, but she stubbornly refused. Does she think this house is hers? I could only sigh. From that day on, my mother-in-law started coming to our house almost every day. On my husband's days off, she often stayed over, virtually eliminating my privacy. I wish she wouldn't just do whatever she wants. And my husband should realize that this doesn't give me any peace of mind. The stress was already significant, but there was more to come. Why don't you cancel this house lease and live at your parents' house? When the baby is born, you'll be visiting your parents anyway. What? What do you mean? I mean, our cute grandson will become the heir to the family home. And he'll also take over the company my husband runs. What does she think of my child? I know that the company is doing well. And that my husband is expected to be the next president. Thinking about the future, we'll need a successor. But my mother-in-law's self-centered attitude has really angered me. It's understandable that there are differences in thinking and values due to being born in different eras. However, I couldn't suppress my anger at her comments. That seemed to disregard my child's voice. Your mother has been quite persistent lately. She comes to our house almost daily, meddling in matters like succession and education. It's driving me crazy with stress. Well, it's her way of caring, so don't say anything too harsh. It's also true that I genuinely wanted children, but I thought we needed an heir too. If my father passed it on to me, and there's no one to take over after me, that would be problematic, right? It was unexpected, but my husband shared similar views to my mother-in-law. It irritated me how they both thought of our child. My mother-in-law continued to bring kindergarten pamphlets unasked, and seemed eager to interfere in the education when a child was born. It's worrying to think about the future. Yet, the child in my belly was growing healthily, and on that day, we went to the hospital and finally learned the gender. It was a girl. Honestly, I was happy with either gender, but the thought of shopping and enjoying fashion with a daughter made me grin all the way home. I was in a better mood than usual when I returned home, where my mother-in-law was waiting. Oh, you are back. Have you found out the baby's gender yet? I heard from my son that you'd find out today. How did it go? It's a girl. But it's not confirmed yet, though it's likely so. What? A girl. You're useless. I was taken aback by the change in my mother-in-law's face and tone. Indeed, she had always talked as if the child inside me was definitively a boy, wanting an heir. I never expected such a reaction just because it was a girl. Whether it's a boy or a girl, the birth of a child is a joyous occasion. Yet, it seemed she only thought of my child as a mere tool. Useless? What do you mean? Why can't it be a girl? What? Of course, it can't be. Girls are just money pits, we don't need them. Even if you spend money raising them, they just end up marrying off, it's pointless. Producing such a money pit, you're nothing but useless. My child is my own, it's none of your business. Besides, I don't plan to rely on you for financial support. We have a succession issue in our family. An ignorant woman like you should not interfere. In today's era, it's wrong to make someone an heir just because they are the eldest son or a male. Children should have the right to choose. Things are different from the past. Why can't she understand that? I've thought about it many times before. But my anger was uncontrollable towards my mother-in-law, who only saw my child as a tool. However, unable to control her emotions, she picked up a box cutter from the table and pointed it at me. Perhaps you won't understand unless you experience some pain. Her eyes were those of a psychopath, truly terrifying. It's unthinkable that such a person was ever close to me. But since it was already late afternoon, I went into the bedroom and locked the door, waiting for my husband to return. Hi. Is it true, the child is a girl? Yes. I went to the hospital today. I thought it was going to be a boy, not just some money-draining girl. Isn't that unbelievable? Well, indeed. I also hoped for a boy. There are issues with the company. Mom is right. The amount of money spent on one child is significant, and it's just wasted money. I had hoped that my husband would be on my side. But he spectacularly betrayed those expectations. Likely, he has no sense of being a father. I was already dismayed by my mother-in-law. But they are truly alike. Trash breeds trash. But, at that moment, I made up my mind. Fine, then the useless money-draining parasite will leave. What? I don't work, I barely manage the housework. And you don't need a pregnant woman carrying a money-draining girl, right? That's why I'll leave. Fine, do whatever you want. At least you can act your part in the end. There was no attempt to stop me as I said I would leave. I fully understood their views and feelings towards our child at this point. And I had no intention of returning. Maybe I thought I'd just go back to my parents' house until I gave birth. But that wasn't the case. I packed my things and returned to my parents' house. When I told my parents about everything, they listened silently until the end. They said I could live at their house for a while after giving birth. And I decided to divorce my husband and cut ties with my mother-in-law. Then I lived a stress-free life at my parents' house. The baby in my belly growing healthily, reaching the 9th month of pregnancy in no time. New facts had emerged during that time. But I had already decided to divorce, so I didn't contact my husband at all. Then I gave birth to a healthy boy. That night, I was discharged, and the next day, as I began a happy life with the little life that had come into this world, my husband and mother-in-law unexpectedly visited my parents' house. It's been a while. Is it true that the child was born? I heard it was a boy. Wasn't it a girl? I didn't even get a call about the birth. I was really surprised when Dad told me. Why didn't you contact me? If it was a boy, we would have celebrated grandly. Initially, it was thought to be a girl, but as the pregnancy progressed, it turned out to be a boy. The only person who was genuinely happy when I told them over the phone that I was pregnant with a girl was my father-in-law, to whom I had revealed everything. I had also informed him about the birth. And my husband probably heard everything from him. But their audacity to come now, just because the gender was different, wouldn't change my feelings. It's a boy, so what? So what? Now we have an heir. Truly a cause for celebration. For now, when are you coming back? Mom said she'd support you, so pack your things and come home soon. I had informed my father-in-law that I was getting a divorce. But had he not been told? However, I have no intention of returning to these two. Wait a minute. Before that, I need you to sign some documents. Here they are. What? What is this, a divorce petition? That's right. I'm going to divorce you. What are you suddenly saying? How can someone who judges a child by gender and calls them useless be a father? I can't live with such a person. You didn't even contact me when I left. You've never fulfilled your duties as a father or a husband. So can you stop pretending to be involved only when it suits you? When I spoke clearly to my husband, he froze in surprise. I think he finally understood what he had done, but no matter how much he regrets it, the lost time won't return, and my feelings won't change. With such a husband, I wouldn't let him touch the child, let alone show him. So, will you sign this and leave quickly? If you stay here any longer, it will be a nuisance. Wait a minute, what you've been saying is all over the place. You're the one who left on your own, right? Besides, there's no way you, with no income, would get custody after a divorce. Stop talking nonsense and come back. It's the father who won't get custody. Don't you know anything about the law? Please go study properly. Indeed, I have no income. But my husband will pay child support. That's the law in the States. When I said that, the two of them fell silent. But my husband stubbornly refused to sign the divorce papers, so I closed the front door. They continued calling for me from outside the door, but I ignored everything. Two adults, really pathetic and embarrassing. When my father said that he would call the police if they continued to bother us, they reluctantly left. A week passed, and just when I thought I hadn't heard from them, my husband contacted me. Hello? What did you tell Dad? Huh? The day I returned from your parents' house. Dad said he wanted to talk about the company. He said it's about time for me to take over because of his age, so I quit my job. Then, he said he wouldn't let me take over the company, and he's divorcing Mom. He said he doesn't need someone who judges by the child's gender. You did something, didn't you? I knew my father-in-law's character well, and he had been on my side all along. But I didn't expect him to take such drastic measures against the two of them. Well, to someone with common sense, this might seem natural. That's how terrible what my mother-in-law and husband had done was. I didn't say anything special, but he said he'd help with the divorce proceedings. Of course, I'll receive child support, and from now on, neither you nor your mother will see or meet the child. Just keep that in mind. Wait a minute, there's no way that can be right. I was planning to love the child whether it was a boy or a girl. It was just a misunderstanding. Can you stop with the excuses now? It's unseemly. You definitely said it, you wanted a boy and didn't need a girl. Since you don't need one, I'm just going to divorce you, nothing more, nothing less. I said that and hung up the phone. My husband kept calling back several times, but I ignored all of them. Then he came to my parents' house again, this time with his mother. The same old story. What made them think I would forgive them after what they had done? Even if they now felt a sense of crisis and came to apologize, it wouldn't move my heart. Any further contact from them was nothing but harassment. I sighed deeply and went to the front door. Really, this is such a nuisance. Can you stop? It's different. My husband also said he wanted a divorce. I've finally understood how terrible I was to you. I'm truly sorry. From now on, I'll cherish both you and your son. Please forgive us. I'm out of work now, and I can't imagine divorcing you. Besides, we have a child. Won't you forgive us? If they were truly remorseful, I might feel like forgiving them. But it seemed to be just superficial apologies. With that in mind, I continued the conversation calmly. By the way, your husband mentioned something. He said he can do household chores himself in his old age. And he doesn't need a useless money drainer. Isn't that why he divorced you? What? And a husband who doesn't earn money, can't do household chores, and doesn't want a daughter is not someone I need. I'm not kind enough to live with someone who is completely useless. When I bluntly said this, the two of them looked down and fell silent. Why were they so downcast when I only repeated what they had said to me? If they couldn't understand the harshness of their words until they were on the receiving end, then they're foolish beyond help. I had no intention of dealing with such fools any longer, so I called my father-in-law. It seemed he gave them a serious scolding, and they finally left my parents' house. A few days later, my father-in-law contacted me to inform that my husband had filed for divorce, and that he had transferred the accumulated child support and his debts into my account. The child support payments were indeed made to last until my son turned 20 and the divorce papers were properly filed. My father-in-law had also divorced my mother-in-law, and she was apparently kicked out of the house. Although he was the president of the company, his salary wasn't high, so there wasn't much money for her to receive from the divorce settlement. From now on, my mother-in-law will have to find a job and live on her own, and no one will be there to help her. Well, my jobless ex-husband and my mother-in-law can just lick each other's wounds for all I care. As for me, I'm living happily at my parents' house with my son. What's necessary for a happy life isn't a promising son or a beautiful daughter. Just having a beloved child who came into this world and a family you can trust is enough to make life joyful.
I stared at my phone, watching the screen fade to black before lighting up again with another incoming call from my mother. 3 calls in 5 minutes, a new record, even for her. The diamond on my engagement ring caught the afternoon light as I gripped the phone tighter, knowing exactly why she was calling. "Katie, darling, wonderful news." Her voice burst through the speaker before I could even say hello. "Lauren just made senior account manager at her firm. We simply must celebrate this weekend." My stomach dropped. "Mum, this weekend is my engagement party. We've been planning it for months." "Oh, that." The dismissal in her tone made my jaw clench. "Well, surely we can reschedule. This is such an important milestone for your sister. The managing partner specifically requested her promotion be announced at a formal gathering." I pressed my fingertips against my temple, counting backward from 10 like Marcus taught me. The invitations went out weeks ago. People have made travel arrangements. I've already started calling guests to inform them of the change. Most have been very understanding. The room tilted sideways. "You what?" "Katie, don't be difficult. Your sister has worked incredibly hard for this opportunity. The least you could do is show some support. The engagement party can wait. It's not as if Marcus is going anywhere." My free hand curled into a fist, nails digging into my palm. Did Lauren know about this when she called last week to confirm she'd be at my party? The slight pause told me everything. "That's hardly relevant now, dear. Actually, it's extremely relevant." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You and Lauren planned this, didn't you? Just like the time my college graduation dinner suddenly became her scholarship celebration. Or when my 30th birthday party transformed into her housewarming. Now you're being paranoid. This is exactly why we worry about you, always turning everything into a competition with your sister." I caught my reflection in the window, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with unshed tears. But something else was there too, something I hadn't seen in my own face before. Determination, maybe, or rage. "The party is happening as planned," I said. "If you and Lauren choose not to attend, that's your decision. Katie Elizabeth Morrison, you will not embarrass this family by—" "I have to go, Mum. I'm meeting Marcus for dinner." I ended the call and immediately switched off my phone, knowing the barrage of texts and calls would start within seconds. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys and purse. I needed to see Marcus, needed his steady presence to keep me from doing something rash. But with each step toward my car, a new memory surfaced. Lauren announcing her engagement at my law school graduation party. Mom scheduling Lauren's wedding shower the same weekend as my first major trial. Knowing I couldn't attend both. Dad always taking their side, his silence as crushing as their actions. 20 years of being pushed aside, minimized, made to feel less than. 20 years of swallowing my anger, of being the bigger person, of understanding and forgiving and trying to keep the peace. My phone stayed off as I drove to Marcus's office, but I could imagine the family group chat exploding. Aunt Clara would be the voice of reason, trying to mediate. Olivia would be firmly in my corner, probably unleashing the sharp tongue she'd inherited from Clara. Dad would say nothing, as usual, but for the first time, I didn't care about any of it. Something had snapped inside me, something that had been bending and stretching for far too long. As I pulled into the parking lot, I realized I was smiling. Not the practiced, peaceful smile I usually wore at family gatherings, but something darker, something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. They wanted a competition. Fine. But this time, I wasn't playing by their rules. Marcus's office was empty when I arrived, but I found him in the building's courtyard, pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his usually neat hair was mussed from running his fingers through it. Telltale signs he'd been dealing with my family. Helen, with all due respect. He stopped when he saw me, relief washing over his face. Katie's here now. We'll discuss this later. He ended the call and pulled me into a tight embrace. Your mother has called me 6 times in the last hour. She's trying to cancel our engagement party for Lauren's work thing. The words came out muffled against his chest. I know. She informed me it was my duty as a future son-in-law to convince you to be reasonable. His attempt at mimicking my mother's voice made me laugh despite everything. I told her the only duty I have is to support my fiancé. A text notification buzzed, then another, and another. Lauren's joined the campaign, I said, pulling away to check my phone. The messages rolled in like artillery fire. Lauren, you're being ridiculous. This promotion is huge for me. Lauren, Mum's right, you can reschedule. It's just a party. Lauren, why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Look at this. I showed Marcus the screen. She knew about this last week when she RSVP'd. She looked me in the eye at Sunday dinner and said she couldn't wait for the party. Marcus's jaw tightened. What do you want to do? My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. I want them to feel what it's like, just once, to have something important to them completely dismissed. He studied my face carefully. Katie, whatever you decide, I'm with you. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. The right reasons? I laughed, but it came out harsh. Like the reasons they had for turning my law school graduation party into Lauren's engagement announcement, or when Mum scheduled Lauren's wedding shower the same weekend as my first major trial. I remember. His voice was gentle. I also remember you telling me you never wanted to be like them. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Aunt Clara's name flashed on the screen. Katie, honey. Her warm voice was like a balm. I just got off the phone with your mother. Are you okay? I'm fine. The lie came automatically. Just tired of it all. I bet you are, she paused. You know, your mother pulled something similar when I got engaged. Suddenly announced she was pregnant with you at my engagement dinner. Stole the spotlight completely. I straightened. She what? Oh, yes. It was her way of making sure all eyes were on her. Just like she's doing now with Lauren. Clara's tone sharpened. History repeats itself when we let it, sweetheart. The pieces clicked into place. Every ruined celebration, every stolen moment. It wasn't just about Lauren, it was about control. What did you do? I asked. I went ahead with my plans. Had a beautiful engagement party with people who actually cared about celebrating my happiness. She chuckled. Your mother didn't speak to me for months. Best months of my life, actually. Marcus watched me as I processed this. He could probably see the wheels turning in my head. Thanks, Aunt Clara. I ended the call and turned to Marcus. I need your help with something. Name it. We're going to have our party. But first, I need to make some calls. I pulled up my contact list. Starting with Lauren's boss. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Her boss? Remember Jack from law school? He's a partner at Lauren's firm now. We had drinks last month and he mentioned some concerns about her taking credit for other people's work. A smile spread across my face. I think it's time for a long overdue catch-up. Katie, Marcus's tone held a warning. I'm not doing anything wrong, just sharing some relevant information with interested parties. I met his gaze steadily. They wanted to make this about Lauren's career. Fine, let's talk about Lauren's career. He was quiet for a long moment before nodding slowly. Okay, but we do this smart. No direct attacks. Of course not. I leaned up and kissed him. We'll just let karma do its job, with a little help from the truth. As we walked to his car, my phone buzzed with another message from Lauren. I deleted it without reading it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't interested in playing defense anymore. It was time to change the game entirely. The coffee shop near Lauren's office wasn't my usual scene, but it offered the perfect vantage point. I stirred my untouched latte, watching the entrance while pretending to work on my laptop. Marcus thought I was at the office. Some lies I'd learned were necessary acts of self-preservation. Right on schedule, Lauren burst through the door, my mother close behind. They grabbed their drinks and settled at a corner table, heads bent together like conspirators, which of course they were. I slipped my earbuds in, opened my phone's recording app, and moved to the table behind them, angling my laptop screen as a shield. Katie's being completely unreasonable, Lauren was saying. I had this promotion planned for months. The timing just worked out perfectly. My mother's laugh was familiar, that soft, satisfied sound that always preceded her worst manipulations. Darling, you don't need to explain. We've always understood each other, haven't we? Just like with your engagement announcement at her graduation party. That was brilliant, wasn't it? The way you suggested I wait until then, when everyone important would be there. My hands started shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. Of course. Why waste money on two separate events? And it worked out beautifully. Your father's colleagues were all there, which helped Charles get that partnership interview. Mum's voice dropped lower. Though I still think you could have done better than Charles. Mother, Lauren's tone sharpened. We're not discussing my divorce right now. Focus on the current problem. Katie's actually fighting back this time. She called Jack yesterday. Your boss? What could she possibly... She knows, Mom. About the Anderson account. About how I took credit for Sarah's work. The silence that followed felt like a living thing. Well, Mom finally said, that's easily handled. You simply need to... No. Lauren's voice cracked. You don't understand. Katie has proof, emails, documentation. She's not just making noise this time. I reached for my phone, ready to send the recording to Jack, when a shadow fell across my table. I looked up to find my father standing there, his face ashen. Katie. His voice was barely a whisper. Mom and Lauren's heads whipped around. The look of horror on Lauren's face would have been satisfying if I wasn't so focused on maintaining my composure. Hello, everyone. I stood slowly, removing my earbuds. Fascinating conversation, really illuminating. You were spying on us. Lauren's outrage would have been more convincing if her voice wasn't trembling. Spying implies secrecy. I'm sitting in a public place having coffee. I smiled, channeling Mum's own weapon of choice. But you'd know all about secrets, wouldn't you, Lauren? Like the real reason the Anderson account exceeded projections. Katie. Dad stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Please, let's not... I jerked away from him. Don't. You don't get to play peacemaker now. Where were you all those times they sabotaged my achievements? All those times they turned my moments into Lauren's spotlight? I was protecting you, he said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. Protecting me? From what? Success? Happiness? From your mother's disappointment. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something there I'd never noticed before. Guilt. From becoming her next target. Mum stood so quickly her chair toppled backward. Frank, that's enough. No, Helen, it's not. His voice strengthened. I watched you do to Katie what your mother did to you. I told myself it was better to let you focus on Lauren, that at least Katie would be spared the worst of it. I was wrong. The coffee shop had gone silent, other patrons pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. I have proof of everything, I said, looking directly at Lauren. Every manipulated situation, every stolen credit, every lie. I was going to send it all to Jack today. I paused, letting the threat sink in. But maybe we can make a deal instead. What kind of deal? Lauren's voice was small. I pulled out my phone, held it up so they could see the recording app running. You're going to tell Mom exactly why you're getting divorced. The real reason. And Mom... I turned to her, feeling a cold satisfaction at her pale face. "You're going to sit there and listen. For once in your life, you're going to hear the truth about your perfect daughter." Lauren's sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit my mark. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about forcing people to face their own reflections. "And if we refuse?" Mum's voice was ice. I smiled, thinking of Jack's business card in my wallet. Then I start making calls. The truth about Lauren's divorce spread through our family like wildfire. I hadn't expected her to actually confess, but there she sat in that coffee shop, tears streaming down her face as she told Mom about Charles's gambling addiction and how she'd stolen from her own company to cover his debts. Now, 3 days later, I stood in Aunt Clara's kitchen, watching her hands shake as she poured tea. "Your mother's not answering my calls," Clara said, sliding a cup toward me. "Frank says she hasn't left their bedroom since Lauren's confession. And Lauren called in sick to work, again." Clara's mouth tightened, though after what you discovered about the Anderson account, she might not have a job to go back to. The victory felt hollow. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, remembering Lauren's face when she finally broke down. I wanted them to hurt like I hurt, but this, "Be careful what you wish for," Clara murmured, just as the doorbell rang. We both froze at the sound of Olivia's voice in the hallway, and Helen's answering tone. "They're in the kitchen," Olivia called out, appearing in the doorway with my mother right behind her. Helen looked smaller somehow, her designer outfit wrinkled, her makeup slightly smeared. "Katie." Her voice cracked on my name. "We need to talk." Clara stood. "I'll give you some privacy." "No." Helen's hand shot out, grabbing Clara's arm. "You should hear this too. You were right, all those years ago." Olivia slipped into the seat beside me as Helen sank into a chair, her perfectly manicured hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "I received a call from Lauren's firm this morning," she said. "They're conducting a full audit. They found irregularities, going back years." The tea turned bitter in my mouth. "How much?" "Nearly $500,000. Helen's laugh was brittle. "My perfect daughter, embezzling to cover her husband's gambling debts, and now—" She looked directly at me for the first time. "Now she's trying to blame it all on Sarah, the colleague whose work she stole." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She told the board you fabricated evidence against her out of jealousy. That you and Sarah conspired to frame her." Helen's hands trembled as she reached for her purse, withdrawing a folded paper. She had this delivered to every board member this morning. I scanned the document, my vision blurring at the sight of my old law firm letterhead. The letter detailed a history of my supposed mental instability, my pathological jealousy of Lauren, complete with fabricated incidents and witness statements. "It has your signature," Helen said quietly. "A very good forgery." The room tilted. Olivia grabbed my arm, steadying me. "I didn't—" I swallowed hard. "You know I didn't." "I know." Helen's voice broke. "I know because I taught her how to forge signatures, just like my mother taught me." Clara inhaled sharply. "Helen?" "It was how I survived in my family," Helen continued as if she hadn't heard. "Always having something to hold over others. Always being one step ahead." She looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "I taught Lauren too well, and now she's going to destroy you to save herself." My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Call me immediately. Jack from Lauren's firm just reached out. It's bad." "What are you going to do?" Olivia asked softly. I stared at the forged letter, at my sister's desperate attempt to destroy me. The old Katie would have backed down, would have found a way to protect Lauren even now. But I wasn't that person anymore. "I'm going to call Jack," I said, standing, "and then I'm calling the police. Katie, please." Helen reached for my hand. "She's your sister." I pulled away, feeling something final snap inside me. "No, she's your creation, and now you both get to live with the consequences." As I walked out of Clara's kitchen, my phone already pressed to my ear, I heard my mother begin to sob. Part of me wanted to turn back, to comfort her, to find some way to fix this mess. But Lauren had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. "Jack," I said as the call connected. "I have something you need to see, about Lauren, about everything." Sometimes protection means letting people face the consequences of their own actions, even if those people are family, especially if they're family. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Lauren's face as they led her away in handcuffs. She didn't look at me, but her words hung in the air. "I hope you're happy now, sister." I wasn't, not even close. Marcus found me in the parking lot an hour later, staring at my reflection in his car window. "Your mother's been calling non-stop," he said, touching my shoulder. "She wants to know if you're pressing charges." "Lauren committed fraud, Marcus. She tried to frame me for it." My voice sounded distant, even to myself. "The decision isn't mine anymore." His phone buzzed, another message, then mine, then both again. "They're all gathering at your parents' house," he said quietly. "Your father thinks we can still fix this as a family." I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make Marcus flinch. "Fix this? Lauren stole $500,000, forged documents in my name, and tried to destroy my career. What exactly does he think we can fix?" "Katie, no." I pulled away from his touch. "I'm done fixing things. I'm done being the reasonable one, the understanding one, the one who sacrifices everything to keep the peace." My phone lit up again. Aunt Clara this time. I answered without thinking. "They're saying you set her up," Clara said without preamble. "Helen is telling everyone you orchestrated this whole thing as revenge for the engagement party." Something snapped inside me. "Of course she is." "There's more." Clara's voice dropped. "Lauren's lawyer is building a case around your supposed vendetta against her. They're going to claim you planted evidence, manipulated documents. Using the forged letter about my mental health as groundwork," I finished. "Perfect. Just perfect." Marcus was watching me carefully. "What do you want to do?" What did I want? I wanted my sister to not be a criminal. I wanted my mother to love me as much as she loved Lauren. I wanted my father to stand up for me just once. I wanted my family to be different people entirely. "The engagement party," I said suddenly. "It's tomorrow night. We can postpone." "No." I turned to face him fully. "We're having it. Every last detail exactly as planned. And we're inviting everyone." "Everyone?" His eyebrows rose. "Including my entire family, Lauren's colleagues, the board members she tried to deceive. Everyone." I pulled out my phone and started typing. "Let them all come see the truth for themselves." "Katie, think about this. I have thought about it. For 30 years, I've thought about it." My fingers flew across the screen. "They want to paint me as the unstable one. Fine. Let's give them front row seats to what really happens when I stop playing by their rules." Clara's voice crackled through the speaker. "What are you planning?" "A celebration," I said, hitting send on the mass text. "Isn't that what they always wanted? Another chance to make everything about Lauren?" Marcus grabbed my phone gently. "This isn't you." "Maybe it is now." I met his gaze steadily. "Maybe this is who I become when I stop letting them write my story." My phone chimed with responses. Shocked replies, confused questions, a single "how dare you" from my mother. I ignored them all. "If you do this," Marcus said carefully, "there's no going back. Your family—" "My family?" I gestured at the police station behind us. "My sister is in custody for fraud. My mother is already spinning lies to protect her. My father is probably writing checks to lawyers right now." I took my phone back from Marcus. They stopped being my family the moment they decided I was expendable. Another message popped up. From Sarah, Lauren's colleague whom she'd tried to frame. "Count me in. I'll bring the evidence files." Then Olivia. "About damn time. I'll handle the guest list." And finally, Aunt Clara. "Your mother won't survive this." I typed back 3 words. "Neither will I." Because that was the truth, wasn't it? The old Katie, the peacekeeper, the pushover, the eternal second best. She couldn't survive this. Maybe she shouldn't. Tomorrow night, I said to Marcus, everything changes. Are you with me? He studied my face for a long moment before nodding slowly. Always. But Katie, make sure this is about justice, not just revenge. Don't let them turn you into something you're not. I looked back at the police station one last time. Maybe I'm finally becoming who I should have been all along. The engagement party venue glittered with fairy lights and champagne glasses, a perfect facade for the bomb I was about to detonate. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced smiles, while Marcus squeezed my hand in silent support. Sarah arrived first, clutching a leather portfolio. Everything's here, the forged documents, the transfer records, even Lauren's emails about framing me. Then Jack from the firm, his face grim. The board wants to handle this quietly. They're offering a deal. Too late, I said, watching my mother's Mercedes pull into the parking lot. Some things shouldn't stay quiet. Helen swept in wearing black, like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. Dad trailed behind her, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Katie, Mom's voice carried across the room. We need to talk, now. I gestured to the small office off the main hall. As we stepped inside, I caught Olivia positioning herself near the door, my back up, ready to intervene. Lauren made bail an hour ago, Mom said without preamble. She's on her way here. My carefully constructed plans wavered. She wouldn't dare. You underestimate what people will do when they're desperate. She pulled out an envelope. These are from your teenage years, your therapy sessions, your medication history. The room tilted. Those records were sealed. Nothing stays sealed when you know the right people. Her hands trembled slightly. Stop this now, Katie, or everyone at this party will learn about your breakdown at 16. About the pills, about everything. You'd do that. Use my worst moments against me. To protect my daughter? Yes. I'm your daughter too. She flinched, but her voice stayed steady. Lauren needs me more. The door opened. Dad stepped in, followed by Marcus. Helen, that's enough. Frank, stay out of this. No. His voice cracked like a whip. I stayed out of it when you pushed Katie aside for Lauren. I stayed out of it when you turned every milestone in her life into Lauren's spotlight. I won't stay out of it anymore. Mom's face hardened. You don't understand. I understand that our daughter committed fraud, he said. I understand that instead of holding her accountable, you're trying to destroy our other daughter to protect her. It's not that simple. The door burst open again. Lauren stood there, mascara streaked down her face, still wearing the clothes she'd been arrested in. Actually, it is that simple. Lauren's laugh was hollow. I did it, all of it. And you know what, Katie? I'd do it again, because Mom's right. I need her more. I deserve more. The room fell silent. In that moment, I saw us clearly, all of us trapped in roles we'd been playing our whole lives. The golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the victim. You're wrong, I said quietly. You don't deserve more. You just took more. And I let you, because that's what good sisters do, right? What good daughters do. I reached for the portfolio Sarah had brought, but my hands were shaking too badly. Marcus picked it up instead. Katie, Mum warned, if you do this, you'll what? Reveal my mental health history? Go ahead. I met her eyes steadily. I'm not ashamed of surviving what this family did to me. Lauren lunged for the portfolio, but Marcus stepped back smoothly. She stumbled, catching herself on the desk. It's over, Lauren, I said. The truth is going to come out, all of it. You'll destroy this family, Mum whispered. No. I moved toward the door. You did that years ago. I'm just finally stopping the cover-up. As I reached for the handle, Lauren's voice stopped me. I'll tell them you helped me, that you knew about the fraud all along. It'll be your word against mine, and we both know who Mum will support. I turned back one last time, seeing them clearly. My mother's desperate need for control, Lauren's entitled rage, my father's too late attempts at protection. Go ahead, I said. Tell them whatever you want. I'm done playing by your rules. I stepped out into the party, where dozens of faces turned toward me expectantly. My hands were steady now as I picked up a champagne glass. "Thank you all for coming," I heard myself say. "I have a story to tell you." Behind me, I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, Lauren's muffled sob, my father's heavy sigh. But for the first time in my life, their reactions didn't matter. The truth was finally going to have its moment in the spotlight. The silence after I finished speaking felt like a physical weight. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence, and dozens of eyes fixed on the evidence projected on the venue's wall. Lauren's fraud laid bare in emails, bank statements, and forged documents. Lauren surged forward, her voice shrill. "This is all lies. She's trying to destroy me because she's jealous. She's always been jealous. The numbers don't lie, Lauren," Jack said quietly. "Neither do your emails to Sarah discussing how to frame her for your theft." Mom stepped between Lauren and the screen. "This is a private family matter. I must ask everyone to—" "Private?" Sarah's laugh cut through the room. "Like how Lauren privately stole my work, or how she privately tried to destroy my career. I did it for you." Lauren whirled on Mom. "Everything I did was to make you proud, to be perfect, to be what you wanted." The room collectively inhaled. Mum's face went white. "Lauren," Dad warned, but she was beyond stopping. "Katie was weak. You said so yourself. She needed therapy, needed pills, needed help. But I was strong. I did whatever it took. I became exactly what you wanted." "I never wanted this," Mum whispered. "Liar." Lauren grabbed a champagne glass, hurled it against the wall. "You taught me how to forge signatures, how to manipulate people, how to win at any cost." I moved toward them, but Marcus caught my arm. "Wait," he murmured. "You want to know the truth?" Lauren's voice cracked. "I didn't steal that money for Charles's gambling debts. There were no gambling debts. I took it because I could, because that's what you taught me. Take what you want and damn everyone else." Mum swayed, and Dad finally stepped forward to steady her. "Helen," he said, "it's time." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't—" "Tell them," Dad insisted. "Tell them why you pushed Lauren so hard. Why you couldn't bear to see Katie succeed." "Mom," my voice sounded small even to myself. She turned to me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "You remind me so much of my sister, your Aunt Rebecca." "I don't have an Aunt Rebecca. Not anymore." Mom's shoulders sagged. "She was like you, strong, independent, unwilling to play by the rules. Our mother destroyed her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. When she died—" Mom's voice broke. "I promised myself I'd never let that happen to my daughters. I thought if I made Lauren strong enough, ruthless enough—" "You'd protect her," I finished, "by teaching her to destroy others first. I thought I was saving her." Mom looked at Lauren, who had crumpled to the floor. "Instead, I turned her into the very thing I feared." The room was utterly silent now, watching our family implode in real time. I felt disconnected, like I was watching a play where I knew all the lines but couldn't change the ending. "What happened to Aunt Rebecca?" I asked. "She killed herself," Dad said quietly. "The day after your mother's wedding, the note she left, it broke something in your mother." Lauren laughed from her spot on the floor, a horrible, broken sound. "So that's it? Your sister's death turned you into this, made you twist me into something even worse?" "Lauren—" Mom reached for her, but Lauren scrambled away. "Don't touch me. I'm exactly what you made me. And now—" She looked around the room, at the evidence still projected on the wall, at her colleagues' faces. "Now I've lost everything." "No," I said, surprising myself. "You haven't lost everything. You've just lost the lie." I walked to the projector and switched it off. The sudden darkness felt appropriate. "The police are outside," I said quietly. "They've been waiting. It's your choice, Lauren. Walk out with dignity or make them come in." She stared at me for a long moment, then stood shakily. "You finally won, sister." "No." I met her gaze steadily. "We all lost. The only difference is, I'm done playing." As the police led Lauren away, Mum reached for my hand. I let her take it, felt her trembling. Katie, she whispered, I know. I squeezed her hand once, then let go. But knowing why doesn't change what happened. Some things can't be fixed. I turned away, found Marcus in the crowd. His eyes held nothing but love and understanding. Some things can't be fixed, but maybe they can be rebuilt into something new entirely. The courthouse steps felt different under my feet this time. No longer threatening, just concrete and stone. Lauren's sentencing had been brief, clinical, 5 years, with possibility of parole. She didn't look at me once. I lingered outside, watching autumn leaves scatter across the plaza until Aunt Clara found me. "Your mother's asking for you," she said, settling beside me on the steps. "She's been sitting in Rebecca's old room for days, going through photographs. I can't fix her, Clara." The words tasted like freedom. "I can't fix any of them." "No." She squeezed my hand. "But maybe that was never your job." My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus about final wedding preparations. We'd chosen a small ceremony, just close friends and chosen family. My parents' invitation remained unanswered. "I found this in Rebecca's things," Clara said, pulling out a worn envelope. "She wrote it the day before. Well, it was meant for your mother, but Helen never read it." The paper felt fragile in my hands. Rebecca's handwriting was eerily similar to mine. "I'm not running away," I read aloud. "I'm choosing myself. There's a difference." My throat tightened. She wasn't weak. "No." Clara's voice was gentle. "Neither are you." A familiar car pulled up. Dad, looking older than his years. He approached slowly, like I might bolt. "The house is sold," he said without preamble. "Your mother's agreed to get help, real help this time. And Lauren has requested no visitors." He sat heavily on my other side. "I kept telling myself I was protecting you both by staying neutral. I never realized silence could be its own kind of violence." The autumn wind picked up, carrying Rebecca's letter from my hands. I watched it dance away, her final words scattering like seeds. "I'm getting married next week," I said. Dad nodded. "I know. I don't need you to walk me down the aisle. I don't need any of the traditional things anymore." "What do you need?" The question hung between us, heavy with 30 years of unspoken words. I thought about Lauren in her cell, Mom in Rebecca's room, all of us trapped in cycles of protection and destruction. "I need you to understand something," I said finally. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not seeking revenge or justice or even closure. I'm just choosing myself." "Like Rebecca," Clara murmured. "But unlike Rebecca," I continued, "I'm still here. I'm still standing. And that has to be enough." Dad's hand found mine, rough and familiar. "It's more than enough." My phone buzzed again. Marcus sending a photo of our new house keys, a future waiting to be unlocked. "Will you come?" I asked Dad. "To the wedding?" "Do you want me to?" I paused, realizing the truth of it. "I want to stop expecting you to be different people. I want to accept who you are, who I am, and let that be okay." Clara stood, brushing off her skirt. "That sounds like healing to me, not forgiveness," Dad asked quietly. "Maybe something better." I stood too, feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe acceptance. As if on cue, Marcus's car appeared around the corner. He'd known exactly where to find me, exactly when I'd need him. That's what real love looks like, I realized. Not manipulation disguised as protection, not control masked as care, but simple, steady presence. "Helen asked me to give you this," Dad said, holding out a small box. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet I recognized from old photos. "Rebecca's?" He nodded. "Your mother said. She said you should have it. Not because you remind her of Rebecca anymore, but because you chose a different ending." I closed the box without putting the bracelet on. Some inheritances don't need to be worn to be honored. Marcus pulled up, and through the windshield, I could see him waiting patiently, giving me space to finish this moment on my own terms. Behind me stood the courthouse where my sister's fate had been decided. Before me, stretched a future I was finally ready to claim. "I'll see you at the wedding," I told Dad. It wasn't quite a question, wasn't quite a promise. Like everything else in our new reality, it was simply a choice waiting to be made. I walked toward Marcus, toward tomorrow, leaving the autumn wind to whisper its own endings behind me.